So all we're really going to be doing today is just going through some answers to the practice questions in that PowerPoint. Alrighty, so let's start with the first one. Hold on, something is not right. Where's my PowerPoint with the multiple choice questions gone? Just 1 second. To revision, I thought I had the multiple choice in there. No, they're in another PowerPoint. Okay, just give me 1 second. I just need to copy paste all the multiple choice ones. Okay, oh, and some people are coming in. That's okay. I'll just accept them through. All right, I don't know why I've removed multiple choice, so I'll just quickly copy these into our current PowerPoint. Yep, okay, copy, and paste. Good. Alrighty, now let's try that again. Okay, so the first question in that PowerPoint was this one. So Connor, a 7-year-old boy, was being taught to build bookshelves by his grandfather. He was impressed that his grandfather was able to remember how to do everything without using any instructions. Connor's grandfather seemed to go through the process automatically without forgetting any aspect of it. This surprised Connor, especially as his grandfather sometimes forgot what Connor's name was. And question 28 is, Connor's grandfather was unlikely to forget the process for building the shelves because, so I'm going to just show you guys the answer. So you can tick that if you've got it right. The answer is C, because obviously when we're talking about building shelves, that's a type of long-term procedural memory, yeah? And remember when we talked about any type of memory loss, usually procedural memories are the least likely to be forgotten, okay? Whether you've got your hippocampus removed, whether you're just losing memory due to getting old, whether you've lost memory due to Alzheimer's disease, procedural memory is usually the last type of memory to be forgotten or to basically be lost. So that's why the best answer there is C. Okay, question 29. Connor really wanted to learn how to build his own furniture, so he watched his grandfather carefully. In terms of the process of observational learning, Connor was demonstrating. So from this first sentence in this scenario of question 29, you should be able to pick up on 2 things. First of all, he really wanted to learn how to build the own furniture. He wasn't forced to. There was some kind of drive there to learn. And the second thing is he watched his grandfather carefully. So the best answer should be A, okay? Because you've got motivation, there's a drive there to learn, and he's watching carefully, which is showing us the attention side of things. So hopefully you got those 2 correct. So the first question for 28 was C, 29 was A. So just give yourself a tick or a cross on your own paper. Alrighty, moving on to the next slide. So the next slide is that Waleed has gone to a shop to buy a new computer. The sales assistant tells Waleed the prices of several computers. The sales assistant then goes to the storeroom to check on the availability of the computers. When the sales assistant returns about half a minute later, Waleed cannot remember the prices. It is most likely that the information about the prices of the computers has been lost from Waleed's something memory. Okay, so obviously we're talking about the sales assistant telling him a number of prices and Waleed holding that in one of his stores of memory. So the best answer for this should be C, okay, because it's short-term memory. Remember, I always give you that example that in an age when people don't have mobile phones, if someone's just telling you their number and you don't have a piece of paper, you're going to keep repeating it in your head, okay? And as you repeat it in your head, you're keeping that information in your short-term memory, okay? So the best answer there is C. Question 32. Now, all these questions have been taken from random practice exams here and there. So they're not in any order. They're not numbered properly. So just ignore the numbers. Okay, question 32. Neural changes that occur as a result of memory formation include the sprouting of something, which create additional receptor sites on the postsynaptic neuron and additional neurotransmitters sent from the something of the presynaptic neuron. And when you first look at this, you're like, oh my God, there's so many words. It looks really technical, but you just have to look at it carefully, okay? Now, it says additional neurotransmitters sent from the something of the presynaptic neuron. So obviously, which part of the neuron sends a message or sends information? That's the second half. And include the sprouting of something which create additional receptor sites. Receptor means, the word receptor site means a site that receives something. Whenever we're talking about the part of the neuron that receives the message, we are talking about the dendrites. So if the first part of this answer is sprouting of dendrite something, and the second half is connected to axons, we have to look for the option that has the word dendrites and axons in it. And so it looks like from here, the best option should be D. So let's just have a look. Yeah, the best answer is D. Okay, so dendrites is the first one and axon terminals is the second one. So just make sure you read the question carefully. Look for keywords like receptor sites or receive, sent, and then you can figure out which one is which. Right, the next question is, John is explaining the rules of his new computer game to Shane. The information about rules is being retrieved from John's something. Okay, so which type of memory is involved now? So you have to be really careful with this one. So I'm just going to show you the answer first. Before I show you the answer, you have to remember that John is explaining the rules of his new computer game. He's explaining, he's not necessarily showing Shane how to play the game. So just be careful with this question because the best answer should be B. Should be B. Oh, no, it's blocked. Okay, hold on. I do need to somehow bring this, make that smaller and then bring that one up. How did the font on these get so big? I will never know. All right, anyways, that's probably a little bit more readable now. Okay, so yeah, so the best answer should be B, okay? And I'll tell you why it's B. It's B because the actual type of memory that's being represented in question 13 here is actually, it's semantic memory. Okay, semantic memory meaning your knowledge of information or general knowledge. In this case, John's knowledge of the rules of the game or the conditions of the game is an example of semantic information or semantic memory. Okay, and semantic memory comes under a type of memory called explicit memory, which is also known as declarative memory. So you have to be kind of careful with this one, okay? So declarative memory and explicit memory are the same. And one type of explicit memory is semantic. And this is exactly what this question is talking about, okay? Because John is not showing Shane how to play the game. He's not showing Shane how to use the controller to play the game, or how to make the different moves on the keyboard or the mouse if it's a PC game. He's simply showing Shane, or he's simply telling Shane or explaining to him the rules of the game. And there are two clues here that it's a semantic memory that's involved. Number one, explaining. Number two, the rules. He's not showing anything, okay? There's no show or demonstration of behavior here. All right, so the next question is question 31. So the work of Elizabeth Loftus and others most strongly suggest that. And you just got to choose the best answer here, okay? And there's two answers here that could actually be technically the correct answer. I'm just going to show you the answer so you can tick it off first. The best answer out of all of these options is B, okay? And the reason that you have to be very careful with multiple choices like this is because whenever we've got a multiple choice question, you need to be you have to think twice before choosing the option that sounds very overconfident or very absolute, okay? So once formed memories cannot be altered, but that's very overconfident, that's very absolute, that's an absolute term. Whenever we're looking at multiple choice questions and the option contains a word like never or always, okay, these are absolute terms. Usually in psychology, we can't say that memories can never be altered. We can't say memories cannot be altered because yes, they can, okay? If people have a disease like Alzheimer's, if people learn too many things at the same time and get confused, their memories can be altered. You can't use a word like always because always is, again, an absolute term. Memories can't always be as strong as they were when you were younger. Okay, so that's just two examples there. C, it is impossible. That's a very absolute term there. Automatically, when I look at options A and C, I should disregard them because they're using very absolute terms there. You can never be 100% sure that something is completely impossible. Okay, and obviously it can't be option D because the work of Elizabeth Loftus never dealt with procedural memories to begin with. It was all about the episodic memories that she was concerned with. So the best option, obviously, after process of elimination would be B. Can't even draw. Anyway, B. Information stored in memory can be altered by subsequent events. Subsequent events meaning events that come after the original incident you witnessed. I know, I covered that little dog in the corner. What can I do? All right, next one. So next question. All right, question 51. Okay, Trevor met a group of new people at his university orientation day and wanted to remember their names. He decided to mentally link each name to an item of their clothing to help him remember. Example, that Jack is wearing jeans, okay? This would be effective because of which reason? So the best answer here, obviously what Trevor is doing is an example of elaborative rehearsal. It's not an example of maintenance rehearsal, because obviously maintenance rehearsal would be just Trevor repeating the name Jack, 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 Jack again and again and again in his head. Okay, but he's not doing that. He's trying to make some meaning out of Jack's name and connect it to something he already knows. So this would be effective because can't be option A. Actually, giving greater meaning. Maintenance rehearsal. Nope, can't be option B. Can't be option D because iconic memory shouldn't be even a topic here. So I think the best answer should be C. So let's have a look as well. Yes, the correct answer is C. So elaborative rehearsal, which is what Trevor is doing, improves the organization of information in your LTM. Okay, so hopefully all of you have that as well. Right, next question. Question 27, Dion had a fight with his girlfriend when they were at the movies. This was serious enough to cause them to break up. Now, whenever Dion walks past the movie theater, he feels really sad. This can best be explained in terms of, now you have to look at this question and just be a little bit careful because, you know, you have to really identify, is that a state dependent or is that a context dependent cue? Okay, so he's had a fight with his girlfriend while he was at the movies. It was serious enough to cause them to break up. So obviously, and he's feeling really sad. So your best answer here should really be context dependent cue. The part that they put at the end where it says he feels really sad is just there to confuse you and to make you want to choose option B. But the best answer is option C here because it says whenever he walks past the movie theater. So the movie theater acts as a retrieval cue, not the actual feeling itself, okay? So whenever he's walking past the movie theater, that's a place. That's why we choose C, which is context dependent cue. Okay, question 55. So Nathan is in the habit of dropping his school bag at the door as he comes home from school. His father frequently trips over the bag, which makes him very annoyed. In order to break Nathan of this habit, his father takes away Nathan's phone for 1 hour each time he sees the bag at the door. In terms of operant conditioning, being deprived of the mobile phone for an hour can be best described as what? Now, if we were going to apply our operant conditioning knowledge to this question, it says being deprived of his mobile phone. So the mobile phone is being taken away, okay? For Nathan, losing a mobile phone would be losing something valuable, okay? And obviously, it's going to reduce the chances that he will leave his bag at the door the next time. So because something valuable is being taken away, and because Nathan has shown his response of leaving the bag at the door and it's come at a cost to him of losing his phone for an hour, I think the best option should be A, okay, response cost. And remember the other word for response cost is negative punishment, but I do kind of discourage the use of that term because Vika don't use it anymore. But if it helps you to understand the concept better, negative punishment is the other word for response cost. Okay, response cost because something valuable or desirable, that is Nathan's phone, is taken away from him for 1 hour each time he shows a undesirable response. And that response in this scenario is leaving the bag at the door, which causes his father to trip on the bag. Okay. Alrighty, so close this and then where's my thing? Next question. Alrighty, so the next question is about classical and operant conditioning. So classical and operant conditioning have some aspects in common. One of these is, and then you've got a few options there. So this is again connected to the key features that define classical and operant conditioning. So just think about what the option is. Hopefully you've already written this answer. So we'll just go through them. One of these is that the learner is passive in both operant and classical conditioning, which is not true. The response is reflexive in both operant and classical conditioning. That's also not correct. The learner is active in both operant and classical conditioning. No, in one of them, the learner is actually passive. So the best answer will be D, okay? D will be that the response can be extinguished in both operant and classical conditioning. That is that whether we develop a behavior in an organism through classical conditioning or whether we do it through operant conditioning, we know that that response can then undergo extinction and that we can get rid of that response. So the best answer there is D. The next question is a little scenario kind of question. So Sven, a tourist from Sweden, got off the train at Melbourne Central Station and asked Kim, who worked at Boost Juice, for directions to Melbourne University. Kim, who is a part-time student at Melbourne University, proceeded to provide a detailed description of the directions and names of the streets to follow, while Sven wrote down the key aspects of her instructions to help him find his way. Kim's recall of street names that are relevant to the directions to Melbourne University rely on her something memory. Okay, so you have to remember that we're not just talking about the street. We're not talking about how to get to the actual university. We're talking about her recall of the names of the streets. So Exhibition Street, Graddon Street, Lygon Street, whatever the names of the streets are. Okay, that is what this question is concerned with. And when we talk about any kind of information related memory, so remembering the names of a street, remembering the rules of a game, that's all information. And so the best answer for this would be B, which is semantic memory, okay? It's connected to her recall of street names, which could be classed as academic or general knowledge, okay? It's not procedural. Some of you might have picked a procedural. It's not procedural because Kim is not walking with Shane and showing him how to get to Melbourne University. She's simply recalling the names of the streets, and then Swen is just writing those down on his paper so he knows where to go. Okay, so the next multiple choice question is again a scenario-based one. So whilst mowing the lawn, 12-year-old Jan inadvertently got her foot stuck in a pothole. As she lost her balance, the lawnmower ran over her foot, severing 2 of her toes in the process. Jan experienced excruciating pain as a result of her injury, and for several months afterwards, the mere sound of a lawnmower caused her to tense up and her heart to start racing. Her mother offered to buy Jan a new bicycle if she could overcome her fear of lawnmowers and once again mow the lawn. So obviously the mum hates mowing the lawn, and even if her daughter has suffered a very traumatic injury, still wants her daughter to mow the lawn. So that's an interesting scenario. Okay, so question 41. Obviously there's some kind of phobia or some kind of classical conditioning that has occurred in this scenario. So the first question is the sound of a lawnmower prior to the accident. Prior means before. So the sound of a lawnmower before the accident would be a neutral stimulus. Okay, it's neutral because normally before this horrific accident occurred, you know, the sound of a lawnmower would not have made Jan scared or would not have made her feel any pain or anything like that. It was just a neutral response that she would have had. So it's a neutral stimulus. Question 42, the excruciating pain that Jan experienced as a result of the accident was the something. And remember, I always tell you that whenever you get a scenario like this, just on the side, it's always a good idea to just quickly jot down what you think. And this is more the case for short answer questions connected to this kind of topic. But just quickly jot down what you think each of the elements are, okay? So the first, obviously the neutral stimulus was lawnmower. Can't write on this. Lawnmower. And we always say the neutral stimulus and the conditioned stimulus are the same. So I'm just going to write lawnmower over here as well. Oh, I really miss writing on the whiteboard. Mower. Okay. And then the UCS and the UCR. Obviously, the UCS is, first let's look at question 42 now. So the excruciating pain that Jan experienced as a result of the accident. So there's some kind of response being shown here. Okay, excruciating pain is a feeling. It's something you experience. Okay, it's not an actual object. So this cannot be any kind of stimulus. Okay, it can only be a response. Now, is it an unconditioned response or a conditioned response? This is what we need to figure out now. Now, excruciating pain Jane experienced as a result of the accident where the lawnmower ran over her foot and basically injured 2 of her toes. Now, any normal person on the face of this earth who is to have a lawnmower run over their toes is going to have excruciating pain. This is not something we have to learn to experience or learn to show as a response. It's not a learned response, and so I'm going to cross out conditioned as well. It's an unconditioned response because it's an unlearned response. It's a natural response that anyone who has their feet run over by a lawnmower is going to demonstrate. And so your best answer for that will be, if I can get that answer, yeah, it should be C, okay? Oh no, now I got rid of my drawings. I mean, I got rid of all the stuff I was writing. Oh, okay, never mind. Question 43 is that Jan's mother's suggestion of buying her a new bicycle to mow the lawn is a form of what? So the mother's basically like bribing her child to get over her fear of lawnmowers and start mowing the lawn again. And she has the audacity to offer to buy her a new bicycle. So obviously in this case, you know, she's told Jan that I'm going to buy you a new bicycle if you mow the lawn. And so that kind of shows you that there's a connection there between your behavior and your consequences, that if you mow the lawn for me, that's something I really want you to do. That would make me happy. And as a consequence, I will buy you a bicycle. That's what Jan's mother was thinking. Anyway, the only theory that deals with the role of actions and consequences is the operant conditioning theory. So your best answer there is going to be B. Okay, so hopefully you had similar responses to what we've got here on this slide. Alrighty, let's move over to the next question then. Jonas has a pet dog named Alfie. Each time Jonas takes Alfie for a walk, he puts on his old pair of runners. After a number of walks, Alfie starts to get excited whenever Jonas puts on his old runners. In terms of classical conditioning, Jonas putting on, okay, so let's do this annotation for this one. Where's the color? I like pink. Okay, so the first thing, obviously, whenever you get a scenario, it's good to just quickly jot down UCS, CR, and then we've got CS, and then we've got CR. Okay, so from this scenario, what is the thing that would normally not cause a response? So what's our neutral stimulus? So if we look at this scenario here, each time Jonas takes, he puts on his old pair of runners after a number of walks. So obviously, after a number of walks is the repeated association between going for the walk and seeing the pair of runners. So the old pair of runners is actually the neutral stimulus, because originally it wouldn't have caused any response in Alfie. So the old runners. Okay, the old runners is the NS, and automatically it becomes the CS as well. All right, then our UCS is the thing that would naturally cause some kind of a response. Okay, the only response that I can see from that scenario is that Alfie starts to get excited. So Alfie is obviously the dog. So the dog getting excited is the UCR. Now, what is prompting that UCR? What is prompting that response? Originally, okay, in the original situation, the only thing that would excite Alfie is the prospect of going for a walk or being taken for a walk. So the UCR here is excitement. Okay, and that excitement is due to walk. Okay, and the UCS is obviously our original thing that caused that excitement, okay? Not the thing that the dog has learned to become excited towards. So the UCS will be going for a walk, okay? Or the prospect of being taken for a walk. Going for a walk. Okay, so the CS is the old runner. So after a number of walks, after the repeated association between seeing the old runners each time he's taken for a walk and actually going on the walk, Alfie starts to associate those two events. And so that will then lead to the CR, which is the excitement. It's the same response, remember, but the due to is different now. So the reason that excitement occurs is different, and the excitement is now due to the old runners. All right, so now that we have brainstormed what are the different elements, let's look at the actual question. So in terms of classical conditioning, Jonas putting on his runners was originally the something stimulus, and now that learning has taken place, putting on his runners has become the something stimulus. So we just match it up to what we did. Jonas putting on his runners was originally the neutral stimulus, according to our scribble here. And now that learning has taken place, putting on his runners has become the conditioned stimulus. So the best answer there should be C. If I can, you know what, I can't actually, can I click spacebar? Oh no, when I put this drawing thing, I can't actually click anything. So I'm gonna have to delete all this annotation I've just done. So clear, okay, now I can display the answer, I think. Yes, so the best answer is C. 42, Jonas has decided to throw out his old pair of runners and now wears his old bushwalking boots when walking Alfie. Alfie doesn't get excited when Jonas wears his old bushwalking boots, as he does not associate this with going for a walk. What is this an example of? So which process? So obviously when Alfie is isolating or only specifying those old pair of runners and he doesn't show the same response to another similar stimulus to the actual conditioned stimulus, this is going to be stimulus discrimination. So the option should be C there, because he's discriminating. He's saying, okay, Jonas, I'm only going to get excited to go for a walk if you wear your old pair of runners, but if you wear those ugly old bushwalking boots, I'm not going to get excited about going for a walk. Okay, so it's discrimination. He's not broadening the stimuli, he's specifying and making that discriminated there. Okay, next one. So Sarah has been asked by her mother to buy a number of items from the shop. Unfortunately, Sarah does not have a pen to write down the items and therefore attempts to remember them. Her mother tells Sarah the items, but Sarah only appears to remember the names of the items at the beginning and end of the list. So serial position effect, again, I'm sure all of you remember this topic. Okay, question 27, Sarah's ability to remember the items at the beginning and end of the list is due to, and I'm not even going to bother reading this because after our research project, I am over serial position effect, but I will just display the answer. So the answer is C. So obviously items in the middle of the list not being stored in either short-term memory or long-term memory and are therefore forgotten. Okay, this is basic. This should be so easy for you now after doing that big research project. But yeah, you always use the process of elimination and multiple choice are pretty easy. All right, question 50. Laurie's mother verbally gave him a long list of items to collect from the shop, but it took him a few minutes to find some paper to write down the items. It is likely that by the time Laurie started writing, he would remember more of, okay, so that you can see that there is some delay because it says that it took him a few minutes to find some paper to write down the items. Okay, so obviously we may see some kind of loss of the recency effect. So he would remember more of the items from the start of the list compared to the end of the list, okay? So the best option there is A. When there is a delay, yeah, that's basically what I just said. Okay, so that's basically what our research experiment that we did at school was also focusing on, that when there's a delay, we will forget the words at the end of the list, okay? Laurie had the same problem. All right, I will fix up these boxes, make sure that they all fit in the slide before I upload this onto Schoolbox. All righty, now, next question. Kayla was studying for a final psychology exam. She was reviewing information on research methods, an area she found quite difficult at the beginning of the year. She was very anxious about this area of study because she could remember very little of it when she began her revision. Although Kayla initially found research methods difficult in terms of measures of retention, in terms of measures of retention, it is likely that she would recall the information quite easily as she revised it because, so this whole question is talking about the fact that Kayla learned about research methods earlier in the year and now she's learning it again before the exam and how it's kind of easier for her to learn it the second time and why that is in terms of the methods used to retrieve information. Now we obviously learned about a few different methods: recall, recognition, relearning, reconstruction. The best one out of this scenario would be relearning. So let's just look for the topic that's connected to relearning. It can't be option B because it's not recognition. Could be option C. No, it's not about the order of topics. So it's either going to be A or C. So obviously the best answer would be C because A is kind of talking a little bit more about long-term potentiation with the whole strengthening the neural pathways. The question doesn't really make reference to that. It's just talking about relearning. And it specifically says, and this is where reading the question is important, it specifically says in terms of measures of retention. So it's specifically asking you to link to one of recall, recognition, relearning, one of those different ones that we just looked at. Okay, so that's basically that's basically what you had to look at when you were doing this question. Okay, so all those different measures of retrieval. Right. Okay, whilst out at a nightclub during an end-of-season football trip, Jake witnessed one of his teammates being violently beaten by members of a rival team. During the ordeal, Jake was restrained by bouncers, which he found highly distressing. He was interviewed by police and asked a series of questions, including one misleading or one leading question. The something, which is located in the medial something lobe, mediates the emotionality of Jake's memory concerning the distressing nature of the beating of his friend. So, like we always say, whenever we talk about emotions related to memory or attaching emotional components to memory, the only main thing involved is the amygdala. So straight away, the first option or the first blank is going to be amygdala, okay? And that will already narrow down you to two multiple choice options now that you have to choose from, okay? Which is located in which lobe? So we've got two options. Is it the temporal lobe or the frontal lobe? It's definitely the temporal lobe, okay? Because the amygdala is right under the hippocampus, which is located, both of them are located in the temporal lobe. So the best option will be A. And I could have just pressed the space bar. Okay, question 18. Jake's memory of his friend's beating is what kind of memory? Obviously, it's a really easy one. So the memory should be an episodic memory. Okay, episodic memory meaning that it's something he's witnessed, it's something that is in his mind as some part of his life. Okay, it's a part of his life now. It's something he went through, he was there. So it's an episodic memory. Alrighty. Okay, now we finally came to the short answer questions. Probably won't have time to go through all of them, but that's okay. We'll see if we can catch up later. If not, I'll just upload the entire PowerPoint anyway onto the school box. So the first option, Marnie is a nurse at a country hospital. Jimmy, an 8-year-old boy, attends the hospital each fortnight for treatment. On his first visit, Marnie gave him an injection, which was very painful. Now he screams when he's approached by a nurse, even if he does not need an injection. So this is taken straight from a past VCA exam. And they just asked you, this is an easy 4-mark question. Honestly, like, it's such an easy question. You would be lucky to get a question like this in your exam. But still, back then, students didn't score full marks on this question, okay? Because again, there can be confusion with which element is which. So the best options here are the unconditioned response, obviously the pain from the injection. The unconditioned stimulus is the pain from the needle, which would cause pain for anybody. What Jimmy has learned to fear is not the injection itself, but the actual nurse who gave him the injection. And so the conditioned response here is going to be fear of the nurse, and the conditioned stimulus is going to be the nurse, or the when he sees the nurse approaching. Okay, so that's basically the 4 elements there. Each one being worth 1 mark. And yeah, each one being worth 1 mark. Yeah, you're right. They didn't write due to in this answer, but they've mentioned, okay, they've mentioned from the injection. So you don't always have to write due to, even though I drill it into everyone's heads. As long as you write where the pain is coming from, you can write fear of the pain due to the injection or fear of the pain from the injection or any other similar word, okay? Alrighty, next question. Okay, the next question is similar. So 2 years ago, a little bit shorter though. 2 years ago when she had a virus, Ina ate grapes. A few hours later, she felt very sick. Although the virus was most likely the cause of her nausea, whenever Ina sees grapes now, she feels nauseous and is unable to eat them. In this scenario, identify the CS, CR, and UCR. So the CS is obviously going to be the thing that Ina has learned to become sick to, okay, or become sick as a result of. So the conditioned stimulus is going to be the grapes. The conditioned response is going to be Ina feeling nauseous due to the grapes or from the grapes. And the unconditioned response is going to be Ina getting the virus from eating the grapes. I mean, sorry, not from eating the grapes. Ina getting the virus. Sorry, my bad. Ina feeling sick as a result of having a virus. Okay, sometimes when you have a virus or you're sick and you eat something, it actually makes you sick. And then you get confused as to whether it was your illness that made you sick or the actual food you ate that made you sick. So,
Miss?
Yep.
Miss, can we say Ina feeling sick because she ate the grapes instead of saying because of the virus?
For which stimulus?
For the unconditioned response.
For the unconditioned response, what did you want to say?
You said Ina sick, felt sick because
Ina
eating the
felt
grapes.
sick due to eating the grapes. Oh, you mean rather than
Yeah,
saying that she felt nauseous? Yeah, that's
yeah,
okay.
for the unconditioned response. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, it's still similar. Okay, so that would be, yeah, that would be the best response there. So you can see the average scores. I mean, elements of classical conditioning, even though it's been in the VCA exams for such a long time, like people can still get confused. So just the main key is doing as many practice questions as you can. Alrighty, Elise is walking along a busy street listening to her favorite song on an MP3 player. She accidentally steps onto the road and is narrowly missed by a bus driving past. Elise is very upset, and for several days afterwards her hand shakes and she finds herself bursting into tears. A week later, after these symptoms have subsided, Elise is listening to the radio while lying in bed. She hears her favorite song again and her hands start shaking and she starts crying. Okay, so this is basically a scenario. So you should be able to see now what are the different stimuli involved. So the unconditioned stimulus is Elise almost being hit by a bus, which would cause a natural unconditioned unlearned response of becoming upset in anybody. Anybody who's almost hit by a bus is going to start crying or going to start shaking, okay? It's a shock, okay, due to almost being hit by the bus. The conditioned stimulus is now what Elise has learned to show this response to, okay? So obviously when Elise was almost hit by a bus, she was listening to some music on her MP3 player. So Elise's favorite song that was playing on the MP3 player at that point in time is the conditioned stimulus. And obviously the conditioned response is the same essential technical response of her becoming upset, but now the reason that response occurs is different. So it's due to the sound of her favorite song rather than due to almost being hit by a bus. So she's learned to associate that event with something else. Okay? Yeah, these types of questions are not super difficult, but like I said, you would get a question like this definitely in your exam or in your SAC in some way or the other, whether it's in multiple choice or short answer, because again, this is a key skill that we're looking at. But sometimes if we're going to ask you to explain it in terms of the three-phase model of classical conditioning, the before, during, and after conditioning, we have done that before with reference to, I don't know if you remember the Buster the dog and him running out into the garden when the toast burns and the smoke alarm goes off. You might remember doing that practice question. That is an example of a more difficult type of question. But yeah, honestly, I think we've done so many questions on classical conditioning that it's not even that difficult anymore, hopefully. Alrighty, another question. Are we doing SAC on EP? You know what, guys, I'm not 100% sure. If we are at school, which looks very, very unlikely at this point, but if we are at school, it'll be done on paper, but all the arrangements have been made to do the SAC online. So I'm pretty sure it will be on EP, okay? It will be done through EP. Okay, so the next question is, describe two of the changes that take place in and between neurons during memory formation. So this is now a question assessing your knowledge of long-term potentiation and the changes that occur between neurons. Kind of chapter 4 content. So I'll just show you guys the sample response so you get an idea. So there's two main things and they're in red here on this slide. During memory formation, the first thing that happens is that you've got new neural connections that start springing up that are going to be related to the information you're learning. And the second thing that happens is that any existing neural connections that are already there that represent that information are going to become stronger. They're going to become strengthened. Okay, so those are the two main changes. So as long as you wrote an answer like this and emphasized on those key bolded words in red, you would get 2 marks. Okay, that's an easy 2-mark question there. And yeah, there's a bit of annotation here that you can look into as well. Okay, this is one on Alzheimer's disease now. So Ernst has recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and is showing signs of interrograde amnesia. Provide a neural explanation for the onset of Alzheimer's disease. So remember, when we talk about Alzheimer's disease, I always mention that you need to understand the hallmark features of Alzheimer's disease. What are the biological underpinnings? What happens in the brain of a person with Alzheimer's disease? Okay, and we talked about 3 main things that happen in terms of their brain. So as long as you mention at least 1 or 2 of those, it's only worth 2 marks. So probably just mentioning 2 would be more than enough, okay? So you can say that in Alzheimer's disease, amyloid plaques form between neurons, and you can just say amyloid is toxic to the brain, so it breaks down the neurons and causes them to die. The second thing that happens is neurofibrillary tangles form, and that results to disrupted neural connections, okay, which leads to memory loss. So that's an easy 2 marks as well, as long as you know that content there. Okay, the next question. Oh, whoops, yes, there was a little annotation box as well. So like I said, when we were studying this topic is not really a well-studied area of memory, especially the 3 hallmark features, which is amyloid plaques, neurofibrillary tangles, and abnormally low levels of acetylcholine. So make sure you try to study that quite well. Okay, not just for our SAC, but I mean, even for the exam as well. Okay, Frank competes in a high-level athletics competition. On the last 2 occasions that he won the 100-meter race, he wore his gold chain. Frank now wears his gold chain every time that he competes, believing it to be his lucky chain. So this is a question about operant conditioning. It's asking us to use the language of operant conditioning. And just remember, we are very, very good now with our language of classical conditioning. But because we don't do as much on operant conditioning, I suppose, you have to remember that the language of operant conditioning refers to the ABC model. Remember, A for antecedent, B for behavior, and C for consequence. Okay, that's what we mean when we say using the language of operant conditioning. So how has this now caused Frank to wear his lucky gold chain? So you have to identify what is the antecedent in this scenario, what is the behavior, and what is the consequence.
So what about attention, retention, and all that?
That's observational learning.
So that's not
that's not operant conditioning. Yeah, that's separate from operant conditioning. Yep. So obviously the antecedent that the antecedent in this situation, which is the situation that has to exist, or the event that has to exist or be present in order for the behavior to be shown, is Frank competing in the high-level athletics competition. Now, Frank cannot actually, Frank cannot actually win the race if he's not even a competitor in the race. So the first thing that needs to exist is Frank actually being a competitor in the high-level athletics competition. That is our antecedent. Without this antecedent, there is no ability there for the behavior to be shown. So obviously Frank is a competitor in the high-level athletics competition, so he proudly wears his gold chain when he is going to that race, okay? When he wears the gold chain when he's going to that race, that gold chain on a few occasions has had the positive consequence of allowing him to win the race. Okay, and he has looked at this as becoming a kind of positive reinforcement. So because every time he wears the gold chain to the race, he actually wins, he has associated those 2 events and made a relationship connection between the behavior and the consequence. So this means that in the future, Frank is likely to wear that gold chain again to the races, and there'll be an increased likelihood that he will repeat that behavior again in the future. Okay, now the average mark for this question in 2010 was 1.3 out of 3. Like I said, a lot of students, when they get questions like using the language of operant conditioning, they don't understand what it's asking them to do. Okay, so just be really familiar with this. And you do need to link to the scenario. You can't just give a general definition of what antecedent is. You have to link that term to the scenario. You don't have to define these words. You don't have to give a definition of what operant conditioning is. You just need to be direct and just answer the question, answer directly what they are asking you to. Oh, okay, we are at the last question, so we can probably finish this off and then we're done. All right, so the last question is obviously kind of related to the last topic that we did as well for chapter 7, which was Loftus's reconstruction of memory. Okay, so the question is a scenario one, and usually if VCA decide to put in a Loftus question, they will always put a question kind of similar to this one, okay, with the same kind of key skills that it's testing. Okay, so the question is a scenario, some kind of event. So Desina was accused of stealing money from the school cafe during lunchtime whilst the manager was briefly distracted. Karen, who was in the cafe at the time of the theft, was initially asked by the teacher on duty for the details of what she saw. She was then asked again the following day by the deputy principal to give an account of the theft. There were some inconsistencies between Karen's initial account to the on-duty teacher and the subsequent account, or the later account, that she gave to the deputy principal. In terms of Loftus's work regarding eyewitness testimony, explain how Karen's account of the theft may have changed. So basically, we're going to be talking about the role of reconstruction in altering or changing Karen's original memory that she witnessed, and why she gave 2 different reports of the same crime that she witnessed herself. So there's a kind of structure that you can use to answering a question like this. It is worth 3 marks, but I have put in bold what you really need to focus on the most. So Karen's memory of the actual event of Desina stealing money may have changed as her original memory may have been reconstructed. You need to mention that word somewhere in here to show that that is the word, or that is the main concept being demonstrated in the question. Okay, one way this could have happened is that additional information of the event, example, what other students were talking about, what other teachers were discussing about the theft in the past day, could have actually altered Karen's memory of what she saw. It's like when you see an event for yourself and then you see the media reporting about it, it kind of subconsciously changes what you originally saw and makes you think about that event differently. Okay, Karen's account of the theft may also have changed if the deputy principal had asked her a leading question. Now, in this scenario, it doesn't say anything about the deputy principal actually asking a leading question or an example of something he asked, but we can assume and we can infer that that is something that could have happened, okay, which could have changed Desina's memory. Okay, in fact, the question doesn't say explain how Karen's account of the theft has changed. It just says explain how Karen's account of the theft may have changed. Okay, so you can, there is some room there for flexibility for you to presume or contemplate upon what could have happened, okay, as long as it makes sense and connects back to Loftus's work. Okay, and Loftus did talk about media reporting, or what other people talk about when it comes to the crime. And Loftus also did talk about the role of leading questions. Okay, so both of these things are fine. So it's worth 3 marks, which is why I didn't just stop it at the first reason. I did put another reason in there too, just to make sure to not run the risk of it being too brief and losing 1 potential mark there. Okay, it's a scenario question, so you try to give as many details as you can from that stimulus information that you've got. You want to use words that are connected to Loftus's study. So if you write this whole answer, but there's not a single mention of the word reconstruction of memory or reconstructed, you will be losing marks there for sure, because you're not highlighting the key idea of Loftus's work. Okay, so as I mentioned before, yeah, I've just put an extra point in there just to make sure that it's got enough information to get the 3 marks. Cool, so that is basically, I believe that is the end of our chapter. Yes, yes, slide 19. Yep, we're done. All right, so basically just before you guys go, I just wanted to mention that, what's it called? I did say yesterday we don't have classes next week, but I spoke to, yesterday when we had our meeting with our head, they did mention that we can, if we want, we can run a optional, okay, don't panic, it's not compulsory, an optional session on Wednesday, because as you know, Wednesday is no online sessions, but you can still work offline. So because we anyhow have a double lesson on Wednesday, rather than letting that go to waste, I've decided to run a Zoom in our normal period 3 online session, and it'll be online Zoom, just a general Q&A for any topics or any questions you have for chapters 4 to 7. Okay, so that'll be an extra thing that's just going to run at the normal time. So just jot that down somewhere in case you forget. It's just going to run from 11 o'clock to 11:50 or 12 o'clock, just about 1 hour, just a quick Q&A session in case you're having any questions and they're difficult for you to email or you'd prefer to attend the Zoom. Okay, so I will put the link up for that probably either today or early next week. All right, so just remember that. It's not compulsory. If you're not in attendance for that Zoom, I'm not going to be emailing or marking you absent from Synergetic. It's just simply for those of you who need a bit of extra help or support or would like more explanation on a certain topic. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say for today. Please attempt the practice sacks that I have put up under due work on the page. Once you feel like you're okay with the content, there is still some time until your sack. So yeah, once you feel like you are confident with the content, give those a go. So that I can, yeah, look at them and give you some feedback. All right, that's about it for today. So everyone enjoy the rest of enjoy your weekend, and I will see you guys, inshallah, on Wednesday, okay, for those of you who attend.
Bye,
All
Miss.
right, bye.